King's Information Network podcast. We're reading the first book in the series, written by me, Nothing's Ever Easy. In case you've gotten this far and somehow don't know that. The fun part is that we are doing chapters 21 and 22 today, which puts us halfway through the book, which is wild to me because it is a long chunker of a book, so it's amazing to me that we are already halfway through. Makes me feel a little bit better about the unexpected break last month. Anyway, without further ado, I also say that every time, let's get into it with chapter 21. Our little window showed it had gotten dark while I had been talking, so I decided that leaving me thoughtful on that large rock was as good a place to stop as any. I think that's enough for tonight, I said, stretching. Dinner had come during the storytelling, so unless Reese was planning something bad, even for him, I figured we were safe for the evening. None of us appeared talkative as Stella settled back and David tucked in against her. I closed my eyes and let my mind wander, as I found myself doing multiple times since we'd been captured. I thought about the cold, dark nights of winter in Lockholm, where my parents, brothers, and I would ensconce ourselves in the den, kids having silent fights over who would get to be closest to the fire for the night. The loser would wrap themselves in blankets and furs. Sometimes, if it got too heated, my parents would intervene, banning us all a certain distance from the warmth. I missed it. I missed, however cliched it sound, the carefree days of my childhood, where the most important thing I had to worry about was what game Colin and I would play that day. Those days had literally disappeared with a bang, almost exactly 2 years ago. While there was still hope that I could spend more nights like our childhood, my closest brother would never be able to. I ground my teeth. I would never understand why people had to create trouble when none otherwise existed. I would forever hate the three for their invasion of Northwind and the slaughter at the castle. I had no direct confirmation that Colin was dead, but word was that very few had survived and no one of any rank or status. Somewhere, in the meanderings of my mind, I drifted off. I must have been exhausted, because the next thing I heard was the rattle of our breakfast being pushed through the slot in the bottom of the door, startling me awake. "Morning, Sleeping Beauty," Jay said cheerfully, as he reached past me to pull the tray further into the cell. I made a vague attempt to smooth my hair, but it was filthy, so I suspected it didn't do much good. "You're looking fresh as a daisy yourself," I said, yawning. He inclined his head. "Why, thank you, kind lady." "Okay, that's enough out of both of you," Stella said dryly and served up the food. In the 2 weeks, we had progressed from one shared bowl to each receiving our own. Not sure what that said about the impression we were making on the establishment. The next couple minutes were silent as we scarfed our meager rations. Then, as I collected the dishes and slid the tray back out the door for pickup, Dave asked Jay a question about some story he must have told about his childhood when I hadn't been there. That led my friend to immediately launching into a related story, which, since it was Jay, actually meant several stories. When I heard footsteps so soon after breakfast, my dread from the day before condensed in my stomach. Jay and I looked at each other as Stella hugged David close, pulling him away from the door at the same time. Stella was smart. I had no illusions that she hadn't picked up on the same worrying clues I had. Dayton appeared at the bars with the largest shit-eating grin I had ever seen, the two brutes flanking him. "Colonel says it's time to get up and go." "Why don't you tell someone who gives a damn?" Jay retorted. "I don't find you at all amusing." Dayton attempted to sound lofty, but failed miserably. "On your feet, both of you." "If you did, I'd be doing something wrong," Jay said, but of mutual accord, we stood as he opened the door. "I really don't want to see Reese's ugly mug again this soon." "Oh, come on, I don't think he's that bad looking." Jay shot me a look that could only be described as scandalized. "If he weren't a sadistic bastard," I finished. "God's breath, Jez, don't scare me like that," he said, holding a hand to his heart, even as the brute brothers grabbed us. "My sincerest apologies, dear fellow," I said as we propelled down the hall. To no surprise, but my continued unease, we bypassed the usual room and made our way back towards the entrance before turning into a new room. Dayton smirked as we went by and closed the door behind us, staying in the hall, obviously not invited to the upcoming party. I turned my attention to the room, able to identify it almost immediately as Reese's office. Sparsely furnished, it contained only a neatly organized desk, 2 bookcases with a few maps and wanted posters on the wall. A quick scan revealed no freedom fighter faces among them. My gaze then darted to Reese, one of the 3 men present, as he leaned against the wall. He twitched, rubbing distractedly at his still healing wounds, refusing to meet my gaze. Jay nudged me as the man behind the desk cleared his throat, drawing my eyes, even though his own never came up from the paper he was perusing. He lounged in Reese's chair like he owned the joint, and it took only a heartbeat for me to realize that, in all the ways that mattered, he did. "So?" Vladimir Opelin drawled, still not glancing up. I only realized it was directed at the final man when he shifted from where he stood behind into Opelin's left and spoke. Yes, they were both part of the 5 near West Corner. "McRose," I breathed, recognizing the young lieutenant in a heartbeat. Opelin only then looked up, studying first Jay, then me, like we were a potential purchase. I was suddenly very glad Tierra hadn't dealt in slaves for decades. "And the girl?" "It's been a while, but I would say it was her. Hard to tell for certain, considering the circumstances." I wasn't sure what he was referring to, but I glared anyway, even as my mind scrambled to piece it together. Well, well, Oakland leaned back in the chair, the very picture of ease, and steepled his fingers. So you're Jasmine Lockholm, and here I never dreamed I'd have the pleasure of meeting you. The pleasure's all yours, I said, even as I turned my attention back to Jakium. How do you know who I am? Jasmine, dear, Oakland said, voice still silky smooth and brimming with smug satisfaction. You don't ask the questions here. I didn't miss Jackson's decidedly guilty squirm as he found the door behind us suddenly fascinating. Whatever his answer, I wouldn't like it. Call me dear again, and you'll regret it, I growled at Oakland while staring daggers at the lieutenant. I like the answer, though, so I'll make the exception this once. Jackson was one of the men at what I assumed was your funeral. Wasn't his fault you somehow survived, though, so I hold him blameless. My stomach twisted. Oh, I'm so glad you do, because I don't, I spat. Jackson winced, and my brute tightened his grip, physically holding me back. Be a sport, my dear, Oakland said. I was rigid with anger, but despite that, a shudder went clawing down my spine at his words. Careful, sir, Reese warned quietly. Oakland raised both eyebrows, gaze raking my body again. She looks harmless to me, Trigger. She can be dangerous. Yes, so you said in your report. You let a female prisoner beat you up. It just reinforces the fact that my visit is a good idea to make sure things are going as they should. I think, sir, with all due respect, you would have fared the same. Oakland's face darkened, and he started to rise, but a light cough from McGroose sent him right back down, very carefully schooling his expression. A bit of my anger faded at that. I was dealing with fire here and needed to be careful. I doubted that Oakland would hesitate to order me executed on the spot. I told you, sir, these two are the real deal. Hear that, Jez? I think good old Trigger just paid us a real nice compliment, Jay said. It took me a second to have any idea who Jay was talking about before Reese's first name, as used by Oakland, actually settled in. In any other circumstances, I would have laughed. As it was, my heart just stopped, I said dryly, unable to summon up even false enthusiasm. Oakland seemed to take Jay speaking as a good time to change the subject. Ah, Mr. James. Actually, James is my first name, my friend replied. Just, to clear up any confusion. Then what is your last name? Oh, no, I think we're all good enough friends here to stick to first names. Don't you, Vladdy? Trigger? Jaxie? The various reactions were almost amusing to watch. Oakland's face twisted as he very obviously fought a surge of fury. Reese winced, and Jackson's eyebrows shot together as he met my eyes, looking more confused than anything. Very well, James, Oakland said after a significant moment. How about we chat about your history? Jay said, waving one hand at his side since his upper arms were held tightly. Nothing too interesting, really. Unlike the Colonel, I don't play games, James. Ah, maybe, but you're a poet, and don't know it. Again, Oakland had to take obvious time to recover his temper. My anger had fled entirely as I struggled not to snicker. Trust Jay to risk so much just to be clever. Oakland stood, made his way around the desk, leaning against it with his arms crossed. I mentally warned Jay to be careful, as he was now within easy striking range, and I doubted Oakland hesitate with that either. Let me tell you something, James. Jasmine, he said, voice calm, but I could tell he was still simmering underneath. I'm not afraid of you or your little gang of so-called freedom fighters. We've been in charge for 18 months, and already the country is at peace again. No brat of Patrick Highcastle will ever sit on Tira's throne. You can bet on it. So how about you spare yourself some pain and just tell us what we want to know? I stared at him, mind still processing the part about a child of the last king. Did that mean he knew? Or was Rainier Highcastle still alive and being held? I held my features neutral as I tried to figure out a way to get that information out of him without him realizing it until it was too late. My turn to tell you something, Vladdy. Even if we did know anything about the freedom fighters, we wouldn't tell you, or Reese, or even Jaxie. The truth of the matter is, you don't deserve to know. You're a bastard who overstepped, and you and your siblings will be brought down by the people who actually give a damn about Tira and its people, Jay retorted. Plus, last we heard, you killed Prince Rainier, King Patrick's only child, 18 months ago, I said. Is there something you're not telling us? I don't think you understand the gravity of your situation, Oakland said flatly. Wait, I know this one, Jay said. If we don't tell you all our secrets and fantasies, you will chop off our heads, right? Or do you go for more the whole sudden short drop, sudden stop sort of methodology? Honestly, you should just leave the interrogation to Reese, I told him. Not that we've given him much either, I added with a smirk. I'll admit, Oakland said, voice suddenly friendlier, as if the bastard thought that might work. I resisted, rolling my eyes. You too impress me, he continued. You're right. For the length of time, the amount of information Reese has gotten out of you is limited. True, he has made his usual deductions, but you haven't given him facts to back them up. We're talented that way, he ignored Jay. Not only that, but you're not cowed by the last 2 weeks. His eyes darted to my bare skin, all of which contained scars in various sizes. This impresses me. You said that already. Shut up, Jay, Reese said. Oakland leaned back, drawing our attention freshly. I have an offer offer for either or both of you. No. I haven't given it yet. You don't need to. We're here because we believe in something, and that is not you. So forgive us for not wanting to join you or not be killed or whatever it is you're about to offer in exchange for us spilling our souls. Spilling our souls sound painful, Jay said. I'm with her. You both think you're rather clever, don't you? Clever is Jay's middle name, I said. Me, I'm a little simpler. Do tell, he said with an insufferable little smirk. I stared back levelly. He waved a hand. It's no skin off my back if you don't, but it might be off yours. Oh, we're going for whips now. Kinky. Jakium audibly choked, and I had to purse my lips tightly to keep from bursting into laughter. Opland shot a glare over his shoulder at the lieutenant before pushing off the table. Being clever in this sort of situation can be very dangerous, James. Let's make this simple, I said, since I like simple. We are not going to tell you anything. This is why I assume they're with the freedom fighters, Reese said. If they didn't have something important to tell, they wouldn't be so insistent they're not going to tell us anything. And no other group is big enough to be a threat. That's what you think, I said with a winning smile. Opland's eyes narrowed. As I said, it's your choice to make this difficult if you want. So far, Reese has played nice on my orders, but once I walk out that door, the gloves are off. Your lives are the only ones at stake here. And that's where you go wrong, Jay said. There's a hell of a lot more lives at stake than just ours, including yours. Are you threatening me? Not directly, you idiot. He shrugged, once again drawing attention to the hold both brutes had on their upper arms, grips that had only tightened as the conversation progressed. I'm unfortunately in no position to do such a thing. Are you really so dense that you don't see the distinct possibility that someone will beat you? Deposing and killing the king is easy compared to what it will take for you to keep the throne. You've got the freedom fighters within your boundaries, growing larger and stronger every day, and that's not even mentioning Neris and Alia. Been having fun with our neighbors lately, Vladdy? He smirked as Opland's expression twitched. Thought not. The moral of the story is this. You are a despicable excuse for a ruler, and I can't understand how your siblings like you. In a split second, Vladimir launched himself forward, planting his fist deep in Jay's gut. My friend doubled over as much as he could, wheezing for breath. I winced in sympathy. Opland grabbed Jay's chin, pulling it up so they were looking at each other. You are damn lucky we want the information you have, or I would kill you this instant, he growled. Never ever talk about my siblings. You always know the right thing to say to people, Jay, I said dryly. No wonder you've never gotten married. Jay let out a breathless laugh before disintegrating into heaving gulps of air again. Yeah, me and my big mouth, he managed, starting to recover. It'd take him longer to explode than I was expecting, though. You really need to stop baiting people who have the ability to kick your ass. Point made, but it was really fun while it lasts. Shut up, both of you, Opland snapped. Now, listen up. I will leaving you in the Colonel's capable hands. We'll get what we need out of you before your precious freedom fighters make any moves. I smiled. Even if that were true, they'll still make their move and you'll still have to deal with it. He shifted, running his thumb along a scar on my cheek. I jerked my head back, trying to dislodge his hand, but the brute wasn't giving me much wiggle room. I assume that's from us. That, and a million others, I said tightly. He maintained contact despite my best efforts. I could see Reese behind him, watching it all through narrowed eyes. It's a pity, really, Opland said, voice soft. You would have been a beautiful young lady. As you are now, he smirked, eyes cold. I doubt you're worth much. I might be willing to make an accept. That's as far as he got until Jay, through some superhuman strength, or a mistake on his brute's part, broke free and slugged Opland in the side of the head. Opland reeled back as everyone jerked into motion. Jay had time to get another good strike in before his brute grabbed him, took 2 quick steps, and slammed him into the wall. Jakium was around the table in a shot to steady Opland, while Reese caught me as my brute thrust me at him. I stumbled into him, his grip tightening. I cringed as both big men set into Jay, trying to shake Reese loose. You don't want to get in the middle of that, he said as Jakium got Opland back in the desk chair. Jay fell to the ground and one of the brutes kicked him in the stomach. Let go of me, I yelled, jamming the heel of my foot down and grinding it into Reese's instep, a trick Rye had taught me. He swore, grip loosening. I ducked out of his grasp and moved forward, not sure what I could do, but determined to try. Jakium intercepted me. Jasmine, get out of my way, you vile maggot, I hissed, cursing the fact my arms were still not fully mobile. I'm sorry, but I can't. I could almost hear the apology in his voice. Jay yelped. You don't understand, I tried. He's my best friend, and they're hurting him because of me. Stop! Opland's voice cut through the room, and the brutes immediately backed off. I pushed past Jakium, but Opland had already made it back around the desk and blocked my path. You, get away from me, I snarled, but he grabbed my wrists in a vice grip. Let go! I had to make sure that Jay was at least still alive. He hadn't moved yet. Well, well, he murmured. This is interesting. I kicked him in the shin as hard as I could. He grunted and shook me. Violence is not the answer. Oh, that's rich coming from you, I spat. Opland ignored me, which seemed to be his habit. Colonel? Yes, sir, Reese said, moving to my side. I tried to kick him too, but he sidestepped just out of reach. Perhaps interrogating them together might be an effective tactic. Look at dear Jasmine. Fuck you, I snapped, wishing I had a better retort as I twisted to try and get free. Let's test it. Jasmine, the game is simple, which you should like. You give me a straight answer, and James doesn't get hit. I took a deep breath, trying to regain some sense of equilibrium. I won't play your game. Let us go back to our cell. Just when it's getting fun? I don't think so. You were in an awfully big hurry to save James a minute ago. That was different. That had been directly my fault. This was bigger than Jay Doll and Jez Lockholm. So when I do this, he nodded at the brutes, one of whom had hauled Jay upright. The second punched him. My friend grunted, and all I could feel was relief that he was alive and conscious. That either made me a bad person or said a lot about the past 2 weeks. You won't care? I favored him with my best you're an idiot look. Of course I'll care, although it's something you don't seem to understand. I will not answer your questions. I just hope you realize that given half a chance, I will kill you, I added flatly. He smirked. Empty threats get you nowhere, Jasmine. Yes, but they make me feel so warm and fuzzy inside, I said, suddenly sick and tired of the run around and bullshit. He reached forward and cupped my cheek, stroking it with his thumb. I couldn't help my shudder, eyes blinking shut for a minute as the hairs on the back of my neck prickled. I stood rigid, waiting for him to stop. I love fear, he murmured so quietly I almost didn't hear him. There's a certain thrill to it, but you might not understand that. I thought maybe I did. I certainly knew what fear felt like, and it couldn't be too different on the other end. At least not for a man like Vladimir Oplin. Are you part of the freedom fighters? If you're so sure we are, why do you keep asking? I shot back. Oplin heaved a heavy and very fake sigh before lazily signaling the brutes. For the second time in a very short period, Jay had a fist buried in his stomach. This time, he promptly threw up breakfast all over the brute who hit him. I silently cheered. Are you with the freedom fighters? He asked again. I looked past him to Jay, who gave a slight nod, otherwise hidden in his attempts to regulate his breathing. Yes, I told him. Oplin blinked at me, jaw dropping, while Reese visibly started. You are? Oplin asked, plainly startled. And proud of it, I said. Now can we get back to our cell? I didn't feel particularly guilty for confirming what they'd already strongly suspected. If anything, it raised the freedom fighters' threat level in their eyes, and potentially lured them into thinking Jay and I might continue to be this malleable going forward. Or at least I hoped that was how it would work. Of course not, Oplin said, literally rubbing his hands together as the shock faded. We're just getting started. My gaze slipped past him to Jay, trying to apologize with my eyes. He got the message because he nodded again, wearily, but then someone spoke. I had completely forgotten about Jackson's presence, which just showed how dulled my senses already were after just 2 weeks. Sir? What is it, Jackson? He snapped, irritated. I filed the fact he called him Jackson and not Lieutenant away for future thought. You told the Duke you'd meet with him at noon, and from the sun's position, he gestured towards the large unbarred windows, another thing I filed away, it would appear to be that time. The 11 o'clock bells sounded a while ago. Oplin stared at him like he'd lost his mind. It felt weird to agree with Oplin, but I found myself questioning the lieutenant's sanity too. You know Duke Wells doesn't take it well when he's not placated. Oplin let out a growl. We're finally getting somewhere, he said, almost petulantly. And Colonel Reese is perfectly capable of continuing this method of interrogation, sir. I'm sure he'll report promptly should he discover anything of use. Of course, sir, Reese said. Very well, Oplin said. Colonel, after my meeting with the Duke, I will be reviewing the garrison. I expect you to be there. Yes, sir. Oplin then reached up and briefly touched my scar. We are not finished, Jasmine. You can count on it. I shrugged. Bring it on, Vladdy. He glared. Come on, Jackson, he said, and swept out the door, ignoring Dayton, who almost fell in, ear obviously pressed against the door trying to listen in. Jackson pushed off the desk, pausing at me and leaning in to whisper, Riley and I are even. I blinked, but before I could fully process that, he was gone. There was only the sound of Jay's ragged breathing, as Reese regarded us thoughtfully and Dayton lurked in the doorway. I wonder how many of my other deductions are right, Reese said, but that's enough for now. Dayton, escort them back to their cell. My brute grabbed me again, pushing me towards the door. Jay and the other brute were ahead of us, and I still hadn't gotten a good look at my friend. Jay? I asked, and then squeaked as my brute twisted my tender shoulder. No talking, Dayton said smugly, but subsided and hurried to the front as I aimed a withering glare his way. The walk back seemed to take forever, probably because I was anxious about Jay. From the back, he slumped, practically dragged along by his brute. Finally, we reached our cell. I heard a gasp from Stella as Jay was thrust in. My escort gave me a shove, and I tripped over Jay, who'd fallen to his knees. Stella caught me before I could hit the ground, while Dave helped Jay stay upright. Sorry, I told Jay, patting Stella on the shoulder in thanks as I straightened. Jay? I asked. My friend turned and slumped against the wall. That was less than fun. You idiot, I scolded as I studied his face. His cheek was already swelling and he had a rather classy black eye, and that was just what was immediately visible. He grinned at me, though, a slightly uncomfortably bloody expression. I groaned. I love you dearly, but you're still an idiot. I patted his knee. Thank you. He shrugged. That man is a bastard. I couldn't let him just keep going like that. I'd been saving up for my big twist to freedom, and that seemed like the perfect time. The look on their faces when my fist connected with his skull, he let out a happy side grin widening. It made it all worth it. You could have let him keep going. I can take care of myself. That wasn't all it was, Jay said, but we both knew it was most of it. It was also revenge for the fist to the gut, which really hurts, by the way. It was very uncouth to hit me there again. Because that's the first thing this crowd worries about, I said dryly. Being uncouth. Should be. Anyway, I recognize the look on your face. You were going to do something rash. I laughed, a touch hysterically. And punching Vladimir Oplin in the side of the head wasn't rash? Of course not. I very carefully calculated the best place to hit him and the speed which my fist should be going when it connected to result in maximum injury. Obviously. Obviously, I repeated. Okay, Stella said carefully, as if afraid to interrupt us. What happened in there? Did you just say Vladimir Oplin, as in, well, Vladimir Oplin? Dave at her side looked caught between excitement and terror. Yes, he came to visit, Jay said, but glanced at me. Jez, I'll be fine, I promise. I know I had to be tough in there, holding back so as not to make your arms worse, but it'll be worth it in the end, I promise. I hope you're right, I murmured, my sudden good mood evaporating as quickly as it had come. I hated the three before on principle, because it was the right thing to do, but that man defied words and human decency. Now, my hatred and revulsion was personal, at least towards Oplin. I let Jay explain as I allowed some of my despair to come welling up. It was barely midday. I'd heard the noon bells as we were let back into our cell, and yet the day had already turned out terrible. Although I was unwilling to give up any large secrets just to see Jay not hurt, and I knew he felt the same way, I still didn't want to see him injured. If Reese started interrogating him this way, we were bound to crack, even if it wasn't the way he wanted. I didn't like the sound of that, either. I'd lost control twice in my life and had no desire to do it again. I could only imagine what I might do if pushed to the brink of endurance, or potentially even sanity. I hoped news of our capture had gotten back to Bo, and that there might still be a chance of getting out of here. I closed my eyes, picturing my friends, and set up a silent prayer to whichever of the gods might be listening. As a general rule, us Tyrans weren't a religious bunch, but I thought if there was ever a time to take the chance the old legends were real, now was it. You know, I think I hurt in places I didn't know existed. I cracked open an eye to look at Jay. Way to perpetrate a cliché. He smirked, scooting carefully over to my side. Why, thank you, my lady. I had to smile, even if I hated the nickname. You're a jerk. I might be, but I got you to smile. I blinked. I'm fine, honest. If you say so. No getting depressed, you hear. I'll be fine. It's just a few more bruises. Nothing I wouldn't have gained from a regular session with the illustrious Colonel anyway. Somehow that doesn't make me feel better. Who said I was trying to make you feel better? I punched him in the thigh. As I said, you're a jerk. He winked, settling in. I know you are, but what am I? I made a conscious effort not to rise to his bait. I feel so useless here, Jay, I said softly. We should be out there, helping. Well, if we hadn't somehow screwed up and got ourselves caught, we would be, he said dryly, but I knew his tone was aimed as much at himself. I still don't get that, I admitted. I don't understand what we did wrong. Might have done nothing. Maybe they're just in the right place at the wrong time for us. My face twisted, but I nodded. In all likelihood, we would never know why we got caught. You do Sirius a lot better than you think you do, I said. He favored me with one big solemn eye. Of course I do. Everything else is just an act to cover how very sensitive I am. I don't take criticism well, and therefore have created a shield to protect myself from the damaging outside world. I snorted, although I was fairly certain more of that was true than he ever let on. Uh-huh, James? You've gotten used to calling me James far too quickly, he groused. It's nice to have something to call you when I'm annoyed at you, that's all. When do I ever annoy you, he gasped, putting a hand over his heart. Or when I need something to call you to get your attention, I said, letting a bit of my amusement show. Sadly, that's better, he said with a sigh. Honestly, Jez, I cheer you up, and this is what I get. Maybe I'll go flirt with Stella. As if you need an excuse. How would you pick up the story instead? Dave said loudly. That sounds like a much better plan to me. I grinned. I suppose I can do that and spare you. Where were we? You were all sleeping on the big rock after escaping West Corner. That reminded me of Jackson's odd comment, and I wondered how many details Rye had left out. Ah, yes, then let me continue. Finally, Jess shook herself and got to her feet, nudging Jay with her foot as she passed to wake the others. True to form, he sat up complaining. How come I get kicked? I didn't hit your ribs, did I? She said easily. He stuck his tongue out but got to work unpacking some of their remaining supplies. She paused to watch, marveling at how quickly he'd fit in, considering how short of a time he'd been with them. Something nagged at the back of her mind, a certain familiarity, but then he looked up. Jessie, darling, mind fetching me some of the bread from your pack? Annoyance took over her attempts to divine why. Do not call me Jessie. Oh, now you're sunk, Rye said. He's going to call you that for the rest of your days because you said that. Damn straight. Jez groaned and snagged the requested bread. Within a few minutes, the five were settled in for the best meal they'd had in over a day, even if the bread was slightly stale. At least they'd picked up a few fresh supplies before making their escape. None were anxious to stick around, so as soon as they were finished and Bo had checked Rye's injuries, they'd packed and slid off the rock without mishap, perhaps a first for them. They turned in the direction of Cavern Hall with Bo in the lead. Even with Rye's concussion, they made good time, heading almost due south. Being able to ride the horses so far along the northern road put them closer to Cavern Hall, but not by much. Instead of taking the hypotenuse of the triangle like they had to get there, they were now traveling the second leg. Bo pushed them past dark, picking their way carefully across fields. When they hit the forest, the same sprawling one that contained Cavern Hall, he finally called a stop. This time, he insisted on taking first watch to be followed by Jesse and Jay. Jess was far too exhausted to argue, curling up on her bedroll and falling fast asleep within minutes. We did well yesterday, Bo said once they'd all gotten up. If we move at the same clip, we should be home shortly after nightfall. He looked between them, since even Jay was being unusually quiet. I think we're all ready to be home. Rye nodded tiredly. It's been a long week. Truer words, Jesse muttered. Jay, how are your ribs? He brightened, although it seemed like an effort. Why, thank you for your concern. I'm glad someone is, he added, giving everyone else the stink eye. Rye kicked him in the ankle. Ow, he glared. She smiled serenely and shouldered her pack. How are the ribs, Jay? Jesse repeated. All right. Walking for a long time starts to aggravate them, as do most other movements, he said dryly. So they pretty much hurt all the time. Yup. Surprised we haven't heard more whining, Jess said. I can do stoic when I want to. He doesn't want to be shown up by the teenager, Rye said. Are we leaving now? Yes. With that, Bo set off to the trees, the others trailing behind. It was easy to tell they were all tired because they remained quiet until after a brief stop for food around noon. Then Jay's spirits seemed to pick up because he began singing, driving Jessie mad. For the love of the gods, would you stop? She moaned finally. Stop what? Singing, all four said in concert. But I thought Jessie would love it with her undying love of... He trailed off at the look on her face. Her undying love of the arts, he finished. Rye rolled her eyes. Clever, really. He gave a little bow, taking his eyes off the crude path and promptly tripping over some scrub brush. He let out a very undignified screech and windmilled his arms, trying valiantly to keep his balance. Jez calmly reached out, snagging his shirt and pulling him back upright. Ah, yes, well, thank you, Jez, he said, smoothing out his shirt and attempting to regain some dignity. Much obliged. Amused, she patted him on the shoulder and slipped by to join Bo in the lead. So, feeling better after some sleep? She asked quietly. I think you missed your calling. Persuading people around to your way of thinking seems to be a gift of yours. Well, look at it this way. I'll probably end up as an advisor to some future king or queen. He frowned. Oh, stop it. I realize you don't want to think about the possibility that we might need to rule, that the prince and the king might both be dead. But if for some reason we did have to rule, we would do it together. You'd have nothing to worry about. Just then, Jay's voice rose above the others. Just because that plant jumped out and bit me doesn't mean I'm not capable of something. Bo shot Jez an amused look and she shrugged. Okay, count Jay out of that equation. He chuckled, but sobered quickly. Is what we're doing just as bad as the three if I take the throne? I mean, what if they don't accept me either? He trailed off, studying her closely. Jez, I need to. Jez, save me! Jay yelped, racing forward and hiding behind her. She broke eye contact with Bo. What did you say to Jesse now? It's not my fault. I said nothing. I sincerely doubt that. He would deserve everything he got, Jesse muttered. Jay pointed an accusing finger. You are evil, evil people. And so very clever, Rye said with a smirk. I changed my mind, Jez. I think we can count Jay in. In for what? A special single-man assault on Oakbridge, Bo said without a flicker of emotion. Jay stared at him for a minute and then sputtered, glaring at all of them. You're not supposed to help them. I thought it was rather funny. You think you're all so funny, but you're not, he whined. Why? Because you're the only one allowed to be ridiculous. Obviously, he said haughtily. The young women giggled. But it's obvious you prefer me not to speak, so I shall oblige and not utter another word. Ever? Rye asked skeptically. Never ever. Starting now. Can I time you? He glared, but pressed his lips together stubbornly. Should we be placing bets? Bo asked. 2 bets each, Jesse said. 1 shorter and 1 longer, since there's only 3 of us. Jay opened his mouth to protest, but snapped it shut as Bo gave him a pointed look. I vote 1 minute from now. He surprised them, though, by remaining quiet until their late arrival at Cavern Hall. They hadn't even had the heart to pick on him during their meals, since he was actually making an effort. The man guarding the door let them in without comment, even if he gave a long, lingering look at their muddy clothes, the blood on Rye, and Jay's still obvious black eye, and their definite exhaustion. Somehow, though, word spread ahead of them because Mick was waiting just outside Beau's room. "What the hell happened?" he said, following them inside. "Lots," Beau said, letting out a happy sigh as he collapsed in his chair. "You need to look at Rye's hand and head." Mick eyed Rye's clothing, still mud-encrusted, and the bruise on her cheek. "It also appears she lost a fight with a mud puddle, but that doesn't tell me much." "I'm fine," Rye insisted, slumping into the other chair. "Oh, and Jay's ribs. I don't think they're broken, but they still don't look particularly good. Could be wrong about the broken thing." Mick took one glance at Jay's battered face and turned to the remaining two. "Who is going to explain to me what happened?" "She will," they said at the same time, pointing at each other. He rolled his eyes. "This shouldn't be difficult." The other three had found places on the floor, groaning with relief to be off their feet and truly safe. "Need more chairs in this room," Beau said. Mick groaned. "Fine." He rounded on Jay, the only one who had not spoken. "I nominate you as the new member to tell me, so speak." Jay did look a bit cowed, but just pressed his lips together tighter. "What the hell is your problem?" "He's not speaking right now. It's a matter of personal pride," Rye said, shooting him a smirk. Jay preened. "Oh, for the love of gods," Mick said, making a gesture towards the ceiling. "You want to hear a matter of personal pride? Jay sleeps naked despite the crowded conditions." "He what?" the four said with varying volumes in amusement. "I most certainly do not," Jay yelped louder than any of them. "My roommates can speak in my defense." "Good, you're talking. Now spill." "God's breath, I do not. I respect my roommates," he muttered, subsiding into a sulk. Or trying to. Mick was having none of it. "That's true, but it served my purpose of getting you to speak again, so let us move on to what happened." The others all commented after a moment of contemplation. Ruthless, cold, low, impressively evil. As the lowest ranking member here, he won the nomination. It was just a matter of the right leverage. "That was mean," Jay opined. "I don't think I should tell you now." "Need I remind you of your first morning here?" He winced. "No." "Then start talking." He heaved a sigh. "Fine. I just want it noted that I outlasted all of their bets." At Mick's look, he hastily cleared his throat. "Right. One story coming up." As Jay started with their arrival in West Corner, Mick moved over to examine Rye. By the time he'd finished explaining their escape, Rye had fallen asleep on the desk, Jesse and Jez were leaning on each other dozing, and Mick had checked out Jay and then perched on Beau's desk. Annie waited until the door was shut, then turned to him. "Aw, Tragic Rennie is part of the family. Can we please drop the tragic part?" "But I like it." "It's horrible." "Then you can't complain about Rennie anymore." He sighed, but she could see his amusement. "Fine, from you." "Deal." They shook on it, even as Annie giggled. "You know, I'm in no hurry to return to my room, and the cooks are making 2 meals for your room," she wheedled. "Are you hinting at something?" "Maybe," she sang. He rolled his eyes. "Of course you can stay the night. Do you honestly think I'd object?" "Well, you do snore." He nudged her. "For that, you can go back to your own room." "Kidding. You don't snore. Much." He tickled her on the side. "Thought you might say that," he said smugly. She giggled and caught his hand. "Being smug fits you about as well as being sarcastic, Rennie." "I happen to be a fan of both, thank you very much," he said haughtily, trying to squirm his hand free, but she kept her grip tight, smirking. "If you want to be either, you need to practice." She cocked her head, adopting a sly look. "You don't practice, do you? Because you're really terrible at it." Sometimes it was just too easy to tease him. His face twisted as if he couldn't believe they were having this conversation. "Of course I don't. Who would practice being sarcastic?" "I still maintain that Sorin does. He's really quite good at it." "I hadn't noticed." "See?" she said, patting him on the head with her free hand. "Stick to the basics and you'll do fine. Or take lessons from Sorin. I bet he'd do it." "Take sarcasm lessons from your brother?" he asked incredulously. "I can't believe you just suggested that." "Oh, come on, Rennie. Nothing I say should surprise you anymore." He relaxed, smiling wryly. Point taken. She studied his face, tracing a finger down his cheek, marveling once again that he was okay with her doing that. "Hey, Ren?" He caught the somber edge to her words. "Yes?" "We're gonna end up married." "I know. Is that okay?" He shifted, bringing one hand up to cup the back of her head, pressing a firm kiss to her lips. "There's a lot of things wrong with the world right now, but falling in love with you is not one of them." He let out a breath. "Is any of it the way I might have hoped? No. Are there a lot of things that happened that I wished hadn't? Of course. But I can't blame you for that, and if the world had traveled a different path, I never would have met you. So, maybe in some strange way, things have happened for a reason." Considering he lost his father and a lot of other people he cared about because of her and her brothers, Annie knew how much he had to mean that. "Thank you," she said, snuggling into him. He wrapped his arms around her. They both knew, for their marriage to last, it would mean her brothers stayed in control, which would slowly destroy Ren. If the freedom fighters defeated them, she'd be lucky if she made it through alive. There certainly would be no happy ending. The next morning, Annie had again won the argument over who got the couch. She was up before Ren. She slipped off the couch and quietly padded over to the window, peeking down at the courtyard before looking out over the buildings of Oakbridge. She wanted to be with Ren, and she knew that even if she were to protest the wedding, it would happen anyway. But she couldn't help feeling she was doing him a disservice. He didn't deserve her baggage, and he certainly didn't deserve a short marriage that would probably end with his wife dead. She put a hand on her belly. There would be no children, no future, no building off what they shared. Even if they wanted, even if there was still time for a child, she would not bring one into this situation. No matter how much she loved Ren and wanted that future for them, it would not happen. She was distracted by the sound of Ren sitting up. "Morning," she said, forcing one of her carefree smiles. "Morning. Did you sleep well?" His gaze was sharp, and she reminded that he missed little when it came to any of them, but especially her. She shrugged. "Fine. Sleep has always been inconsistent." He snagged his crutches and made his way to her side. "Sometimes sleep is more trouble than it's worth," he agreed, looking out the window past her. "What were you thinking about?" "What a beautiful morning it is," she said, which was only a partial lie. "This is Happy Thoughts morning." "Is it?" He asked, amused. "Like what? Would wedding thoughts qualify?" Both started, spinning, Ren with some difficulty, to the door where Sorin stood. It never ceased to amaze Annie how quietly Sorin could do things. "Wedding thoughts," Ren echoed. "Vladimir believes it is time to announce that Ren is still alive. And that I'm marrying Annie. Shortly thereafter, yes." She had to admit the almost genius behind the whole plan, which was no doubt Sorin's idea. With Ren back in place as leader, publicly supporting her brothers, and with spin on events that made it look like their assault in the castle years previous had all been a great and justifiable action, it would calm a lot of the public's restlessness and perhaps even make Allie and Neris think twice before pressing the border. Of course, Ren would be nothing more than a figurehead. She knew he was resigned to it, but also knew it would drive him mad. Captivity had already taken its toll. It was plain to Annie he found it hard to sit still, and the actual scuff lines in the floor were testament to that. "I understand that this is still quite new, and for that I apologize, but the plan must go forward," Sorin said. "Of course it does," she said. "Rennie and I expected that. Right, Rennie?" "Right," he said dutifully. "Don't worry about it, Sorin. It could be a lot worse for me." Annie felt a flash of amusement. He was trying to be smug again. She calmly punched him in the side. "Ow! Damn it! Ow! Ribs!" He bounced away from her awkwardly and sagged into his chair, clutching his side like she'd taken a knife to it and twisted. She smirked, able to see the same smirk on Sorin's face out of the corner of her eye. "You deserved that. Not in the ribs when they're busted," he whined. She stifled a giggle. "It was a compliment!" At her look, he retreated. "Kind of." "Trust me, if I'd been aiming for your ribs, you would be in a lot more pain," she told him, "so stop whining." "Yes, whining is most unbecoming." "No one asked you," he shot at Sorin, whose smirk only grew. Annie perched herself on the arm of the chair, secure in the knowledge he wouldn't push her off. "So, wedding thoughts. How much do Tragic Rennie and I get to plan?" "Nika," he grumbled. She patted him on the head. "You're fine, Rennie. Now shush." He sputtered indignantly, and Sorin spoke right over him. "Why are you asking me that?" "You're the one with the experience," she asked softly. Only then did Ren go silent. He stared at her, expression almost indecipherable except for a deeply lined sadness. After a moment he shrugged. "We obviously did it all herself, as her parents didn't approve at first. If you want to plan it, feel free." He glanced at Ren. "I'm afraid the invite list is very specific, and I refuse to invite your brother." "I guess I'll accept that the family reunion will have to wait for another day." Annie watched the pair. There was none of the rivalry and dislike that there was between Ren and Vlad. These were two men who, over the past year or so, had come to understand the other in very real ways. She looked between them, the two people she loved most in the world, and thought Ren had to be wrong. This couldn't have happened for a reason, at least not a good one, because no matter what, she would lose one of them forever, and all their odds were against her brother. She shook the thought out of her head. "Oh, come on, sunshine, you'll practically be family now." He smiled slightly. "As amusing as the idea is, I still must insist. She'll go get some work done. Vladimir went down to Greensward for the day and won't be back until later." "What's in Greensward?" Annie asked. "He wanted to speak to a pair of prisoners down there, the two that Reese insists are freedom fighters." "May the gods be with them," Ren muttered. "Indeed," Sorin said. "I will speak to you both later." With that, he left, pulling the door shut behind him. Neither moved until Ren finally broke the silence. "I guess that means we're engaged." "And that makes you my tragic Rennie fiancé," she said, pulling her gaze from the door to grin at him. He stared. "I suppose comments like that shouldn't surprise me anymore." She leaned down and kissed his cheek. "No, they really shouldn't." Dave shushed me and nodded towards the door. Visitor, he murmured, shifting towards Stella. Open? Jay asked, a shadow crossing his face. I peered out the door. No, Reese. Alone? I nodded as Colonel Reese stalked up to the door, expression dark. He's gone, he announced without preamble. Well, that just makes my day, Jay said dryly. Make my week if you go away too. How are you feeling, James? Oh, fine. Bruised, battered, and otherwise beaten up. Same old. Anything broken? Like you'd care. You didn't when your goons broke Jez's arms. That was a mistake, he said stiffly. I should have reacted quicker. I'm in no mood to play your games. Is anything broken? I let out a sharp laugh. Aren't in the mood? You're kidding, right? You had to have loved that. Got some of your all-knowing hunches confirmed. Reese hesitated. I do not like it when others interfere with my investigations. Investigation, I said incredulously. Is that what you call it? He started, but Jay cut him off. Bugger off, Reese, he said tiredly. You got your information for the day. Unless you're here to take one of us again, we are not in the mood. There is nothing broken. The colonel hesitated again before walking away silently. Jay and I exchanged glances. I wondered at the undertones in that conversation. Was Reese somehow not happy with his bosses, even though he seemed to take great delight in torturing us? Was it Vladimir specifically? I wouldn't know unless I got the dubious pleasure of meeting the other siblings, or unless Reese said something, which I strongly doubted. That was strange, Jay said finally. That's one word for it. Investigation my ass, I grumbled, leading back. I'm going to try a nap, he said. We can continue when I wake up, if that's okay. Nap sounds good, I agreed, although I wasn't sure I could sleep, or that it would be restful, considering Vladimir's open face seemed etched on the back of my eyelids. Stella nodded her agreement, and Dave snuggled against her, the two starting to talk quietly. I settled back and closed my eyes, halfway to sleep, before Jay spoke quietly. Look at how much better your arms are. I cracked open one eye and smiled, strangely reassured. Thanks. I knew there was a reason I kept you around. He snorted. I love you too, Jasmine. My full name still sounded foreign to me. I'd been Jez for 2 years. Jasmine still seemed like someone else, someone who'd been too young and naive to realize what the world could be like. I had certainly seen it all now, war and battle and both the best and worst that mankind had to offer. It made me wonder what might happen next. Hopefully helping rule Tira, which just about blew my mind. Talk about a long road. Somewhere in that, as it was becoming the norm, I drifted off. Stella shook me. Someone's coming, she reported as I came sluggishly awake, whole body aching. Dave patted my shoulder and scooted back to Stella's side. Any ideas? Jay asked, sounding as exhausted as I felt. I peered out the door, and my eyebrows shot up in surprise. Jackson McGrose. McGrose, he repeated as the young man came to a stop outside our cell. I was glad to notice he had eyes only for Jay and me. I need to get in contact with the freedom fighters, he said quickly, as if he might change his mind if he waited too long. I stared at him, truly taken aback by his version of hello. Jay let out an incredulous laugh. What, are you thinking about defecting? He looked honestly guilty at that question. I can't. Of course you can, if you wanted. Your problem is that you won't, which is fine. We don't want losers on our side anyway, Jay said. I can't, he repeated more firmly. I saved you back there. I wouldn't be too hostile. Reese already told us that Oakland left, so good luck threatening us. Jackson shifted nervously. It's not what I meant. Then give us 100 good reasons why we should even think about telling you how to contact the freedom fighters, I interrupted, before Jay could launch into him more. I need to post a letter. We all stared at him. Jay spoke first. There is a courier system for that, genius? I need to post a letter to your leader, he reiterated. He glanced on the corridor, then pulled a wrinkled envelope out of his breast pocket. I caught a glimpse of the handwriting and craned to see it more clearly. It looked familiar. Can I see that? His grip on it tightened before he carefully held it through the bars. I plucked it from his fingers and read the front. In handwriting achingly similar to Beau's, it read, Beau Highcastle, my brother. I could only stare, shocked to the core and unable to articulate it. Who wrote it? Jay asked, not having seen it yet. Jackson squirmed. I can't tell you. Jay snorted. Then we can't tell you how to mail it. I need to mail it, please. Annie will kill me if he trailed off. At that, even my head came up. Annie, Anika Oplin. What does she have to do with this? He hesitated yet again, looking between us. She didn't write it. So that's why Jackson's expression flickered earlier when we mentioned Rainier Highcastle being dead. No, you're right. I passed the letter to Jay. Prince Rainier did. What? Jay squawked, even as he automatically looked down. He's dead. No, he's not, and I think this proves it. Right, McRose? Jackson looked downright uncomfortable. They kept him alive to marry Annie. I let out a low whistle as the implications of that struck me. That's scarily brilliant. Sorin's idea, Jackson said with just a hint of pride. I eyed him again, even more curious than before. Right, had eventually told Jesse and I about their conversation, maybe even flirting, while Jackson had been a prisoner. On principle, I didn't like him because he'd been at my planned execution, and yet I couldn't find it in me to hate him. She wasn't wrong. In a different world, she and Jackson might have been friends. Wait, Stella interrupted, speaking for the first time, having peered over Jay's shoulder at the letter. All eyes shot to her. Are you saying that not only did the High Castles have a second child, but his name, you knew, and you didn't tell your superiors? I wish she hadn't spoken, knowing that her showing detailed knowledge could be bad. At the same time, I had to agree with the question, and it made me feel certain the chances were small Jackson would tell on her. I'm not going to betray Annie's trust, Jackson said stoutly. If she doesn't want me to tell her brothers, I'm not about to. How honorable of you. Look, I promised I'd do everything I could to get this to Ren's brother. I didn't miss the use of the nickname. I didn't tell them about Bo or Rylia, or that I knew before this that you two were the Freedom Fighters. Just give me a place for a drop, or something. Write a sealed written note. I won't open it. Just let me send this letter. He sounded desperate, and I had to agree with him. I knew right then we would give him away. Bo deserved to know his brother was alive and to read his words. Who knew, it might even prove critical to how we approached our eventual attack on Oakbridge. What does Annie have over you? Jay asked, cocking an eyebrow. He actually smiled. Nothing, really. I guess you could say it's my horrible nickname, but mostly I owe her this. Jaxie? Jay asked with no lack of glee. If I get this sent, she has agreed to stop. I snorted. Seems like overkill for the risk you're taking. Annie's worth it, he said stoutly, which seemed to be his default when it came to Nico Opalin. I had to wonder what caused the intense devotion. Fair enough, I replied, since it seemed we wouldn't get anything else out of him. You're really odd. He shrugged. It seems to come naturally to us. Now you're going to tell me, or am I back at square one? I wanted to ask about that us, but refrained, not wanting to spook him. Get me paper, a writing utensil, and a way to seal it, and we have a deal. He slipped his bag off his shoulder and pulled out the requested goods. Will these do? Perfectly. I took them and passed them to Jay. I knew that writing would still hurt. Be honest, I murmured. He nodded and scribbled down a quick note before holding it up for my perusal. Brief and to the point, it basically told our 2 Greensword contacts to get the letter to Bo post-haste, then move to the secondary location in case the primary one was now compromised. Then he'd sign it for both of us, which would also let Bo know that we were still alive. I had to wonder what he'd thought after we disappeared. I took it and passed it back to Jackson, who knelt down and sealed it. He offered it back. I tested the seal, found it firm, and returned it. Now listen up. I'm going to give you the directions you want, but if that is not sealed, they will kill you on sight and deal with the consequences later. Got it? Yes, ma'am, he said quickly, all but snapping to attention at my tone. Good. I sketched out the directions and had him repeat them. He made no move to record them, which gave me a bit of hope we were doing the right thing and trusting him. If something happens and I found out our people have been harmed, I will find a way to make you pay for it. Understand? Yes, ma'am. Furley, he said, tucking the 2 letters away. I'm in your debt. I guess we'll see if you can ever pay up, I said. As far as I'm concerned, you're in my debt for the rest of my life, or of your life. Jackson cringed, eyes darting away. Yes, ma'am, he murmured. Are you stationed here permanently? He nodded this time, looking a touch confused. I didn't elaborate. Remember what I said. I will. With that, he bowed slightly, gathered up his bag, and trotted down the hall. Why'd you ask that? Jay asked, as soon as he was out of hearing. He'll be able to recognize at least Rye and probably Jesse on sight, and they're coming soon. If they weren't already here, worried about our disappearance. Our friends were part of Phase 2 of the Greensword plan. We were supposed to meet up with them, but of course couldn't. Oh, that could be bad. We're going to have to trust that despite the side he picks, he means us no harm. You honestly think he wouldn't report their presence if he saw them? I don't know what to think, I admitted. It almost seems like he wants to switch sides, but something is stopping him. He's risking a lot with holding what information he has, Stella said. I think you can at least trust him to complete this without telling. And other than that, I think your friends should hope they don't run into him. Our luck doesn't always tend to run that way, Jay admitted. Not a word out of his mouth was a lie, as far as I could tell. I wonder what his story is. We'll probably never know, my friend said. He had the facts to back him up, Stella put in. They obviously don't know about Bo or Rye, or they would have been asking already. We nodded before he fixed her with a stern look. You need to be more careful. The last thing you and Dave need is to draw their attention. Reese is already too aware of your presence. That worried me too, and I wondered if we were playing into Reese's hands by making friends with our cellmates. The rest of our wing of the jail, at least, seemed fairly quiet. I'm sorry, it came out before I could stop it. I tried to phase it like I didn't have additional information except from the conversation and common knowledge. I replayed her comment in my head. You might have been okay, just be careful, I said. The last thing I wanted was for Dave to be hurt on our account. I won't say a word, the boy told me, crossing his heart solemnly. I reached over and ruffled his hair. Good. But now they're gone, so maybe we can get back to the story, he said, with what he obviously considered a winning grin. It was getting better. Jay was obviously not a good influence on him. I laughed. Sure. We just gotten back to Cavern Hall, right? Yes, and Jay was telling Mick what happened. I saluted. Then onward. Mick remained silent after Jay finished until Bo prompted him. Well, I had a bad feeling about this trip from the beginning. Would have been nice if he'd shared that, Jessie grumbled to Jez. She couldn't disagree. He'd only not wanted Bo to go, not for them not to go at all. We did need to get a new contact, though, Bo said, striving for the positive, as usual. We'll send someone out after this dies down to meet with Mrs. Cornwall and see what we can find out, Mick agreed. He glanced around at the trio on the floor, the asleep Rye, and Bo, who was slouched in his chair. You should all get some sleep. How's Rye? Fine enough. They're shallow, luckily. Her hand is a bit more severe, but she missed doing any serious damage. Hands just heal slowly because of their heavy use. Jessica? Yes, sir? She asked, stifling a yawn. Mick looked amused, knowing he would never get a sir out of them under less exhausted circumstances. Can you carry Riley, or do you need help? I probably can, but I've never tried. Jay nudged Rye even as he stood. I can get her, even with your ribs. Piggyback shouldn't put too much stress on them, he said, chivying Rye up onto his back. She did so while still half asleep, wrapping her arms loosely around his neck while he straightened. Come along, Jessica. I need you to make sure she doesn't fall off or cause me further bodily harm. Jessie snorted but stood. I think this is a ploy to get me alone. He winked. The thought had crossed my mind. She laughed. Good. I would have been honestly worried about you if you hadn't. Now that just won't do. The good-natured banter continued as the trio moved towards the sleeping rooms. Jez kept her eyes closed as Mick spoke again. What did Jay not tell me? His injuries do not add up with his story. Now she opened her eyes, exchanging a brief look with Bo. Nothing, they said simultaneously. Bo, don't you dare try and lie to me. Same goes for you, Jasmine. She winced at her full name. It's just... She trailed off, looking to Bo for assistance. Rye told us her past. I'll tell you the whole thing at some point, but suffice to say it's bad. One of the worst I've heard because she's so damn young, and that led to complications. Jay had admitted the part that painted Jez in a bad light, a fact for which she'd been grateful. All Mick had to do was raise both eyebrows and stare them down. They squirmed like schoolchildren. Bo quickly outlined the consequences of Rye's storytelling, including her and Jay's fight with the band of teenage thugs and her incident and Jez's insensitive comment the next morning and subsequent apology. Jez was glad to skip the telling. Mick's recriminating look was bad enough. Very well, he said when Bo finished. You both need to get some sleep. Bo, when you're functional again, come find me. We've had some news. I could... No. Sleep is more important. It can wait, he said firmly. Standing, he patted Bo on the shoulder, then exited, leaving the pair alone. I suppose he has a point, Bo said. It's been a busy few days. That's putting it lightly. True. I suppose you'll be following Jesse and Jay. She snorted. Interrupt their flirting? No thanks. You should just stay here, Bo said. She often did stay, especially if they worked late. I'm kind of awake now, she said, ready to leave if he wanted to sleep. He shrugged. All right, just suggesting. She had to fight a grin at his earnestness, considering how many times they'd slept curled together on his bed. There's no hurry for me to get back. He bit his lip. We don't need to, do anything. He instantly went red, almost before he'd gotten the rather tame sentence out. She tried not to laugh, pushing herself to her feet and settling in his lap. She cupped his face and kissed him swearily on the lips. Startled, he still responded in good time. She pulled back after a minute. We haven't talked about it, but you're right. We really need to be content with kissing until this is over. Last thing I want is there to be an accident, and she couldn't even mention the possibility of a child out loud. Sometimes I hate the idea of self-control. It's a good thing you have it in spades, then. Maybe too much. I don't see you kissing me right now. He laughed. We shouldn't have this conversation now. Why not? Because our conversations when we're exhausted always rapidly disintegrate and leave me embarrassed once I'm fully awake again. She grinned. Now you're being no fun. I'm suggesting kissing. That doesn't require conversation. No fun? He mock-glared. You could leave. She kissed him again. You don't mean that. He wrinkled his nose. No, I don't. It's always nice to have some private time, even if we should sleep. A yawn interrupted Jez's protest, and she smiled sheepishly. That probably is a good idea. He immediately wrapped his arms around her and escorted her over to his bed. He nudged her to settle down and then moved away as soon as she did. Where do you think you're going? She demanded. Someone's cleaned. My blanket's on the other side of the room. She watched him before stretching across the entire bed. He scooped up the blanket, turned, and started laughing. Where am I supposed to sleep? She pointed to the floor. That looks comfortable. He promptly threw the blanket over her face and sat on her stomach. She started giggling. Get off, she said, pushing the blanket off to grin up at him. Nope, he said, bouncing a little. Fine, fine. She wiggled out from underneath him. Here, space to sleep. He kicked off his boots, then slid down beside her. Good night. She dropped the blanket on him. Night. Bo rolled his eyes and shook it out before draping it over them both. For a moment they just lay there before she rolled onto her side and scooted so her back was pressed against him. This was their usual favorite way of cuddling. Instinctively, he shifted, fitting his body against hers and wrapping an arm around her waist. Much better, she murmured, closing her eyes. Good. Within moments, they were both fast asleep. The next morning, Bo woke early as usual. He lay without moving before he slowly began to untangle himself. His arm was underneath her arm was thrown across his chest, and he wasn't sure how their legs ended up so tangled. He'd almost extracted himself when Jez cracked open an eye to glare blurrily at him. Sleep, she muttered, rolling away. Go for it. I've got work to do. Sure, Mick has it under control. Not enough. Close enough, she corrected, grinning sleepily as she tugged him closer to kiss him. I can think of reasons for you to stay. He chuckled and finally slipped out from under the blanket. You and me both, but we did agree that it's better if we don't. She heaved a sigh, which turned into a yawn. Was hoping you'd forget that. I forget nothing. My mind is a steel trap. She rolled over and closed her eyes. You suck. Yeah, go back to sleep. I'm going to get some work done. You work too much. I know, but that comes with the territory. She sighed again and sat up, stretching. Now I'm awake. Not fair. You owe me a nap. How does that work? You're smart, she said sweetly. You can figure it out. He settled at his desk. I'm glad you have such faith. Before she could respond, Mick appeared in the doorway. Knock, knock. He took in the room and raised his eyebrows. Am I interrupting? It was not the first time he'd come in on them just waking up, so the question was really more at the obvious light-hearted bickering. No. Other than Bo being stupid and waking me up, Jez said, sliding off the bed. Shame on you for waking a lady, Mick told Bo dryly, coming in. Hey now, she's the one who insisted on talking until she was too awake. Don't blame me. And how was last night? Jez looked up as she plopped herself across from Bo, snatching a paper. Are you asking if there was anything inappropriate going on last night, Mick? I would do no such thing, he said stiffly. Bo grinned. Don't tease him, Jez. Last night involved a tiny bit of banter and a lot of sleep. I was just curious if we should install a bell in the hall, Mick retorted, recovering. Bo snorted, but Jez beat him to the response. No, we've agreed it's in everyone's best interest if nothing happens until this ends. All they would have seen is us sleeping, which is not exactly a new thing. Felt I should ask, he said, smirking. Personally, I think you hope we do to give you and Bo some male bonding time. Yes, that's it exactly, Mick said, dodging a crumpled note she tossed casually over her shoulder as he moved to join them. You caught me. See, even when I'm sleepy, I'm smart. You're always smart, Bo told her solemnly as they settled in. A few days later, Jessie tracked Jez down in the kitchen with Jay and the rest of the kitchen staff. Have you seen Rye today? No. Why? I can't find her. She wasn't at the meeting earlier and in none of her usual hidey holes. I'm sure it's nothing serious. Maybe she just needed a little alone time. I wouldn't blame her. Jay piped up from where she was peeling potatoes. He was peeling potatoes. Jessie's eyes dropped to the potato and she grinned. Potato duty, Jay? He stuck a tongue out at her. It's not a punishment. I like peeling potatoes, so not another word or I get an hour of free flirting. Free flirting? Jez asked curiously. Yes, she's not allowed to cause me bodily harm for an entire hour of flirting if she instigates something. An hour seems steep for a little harmless potato teasing, Jessie said. Who said it's harmless? My pride can only take so much. Jez rolled her eyes. Do you think we should track Rye down? Do you mind helping? Jessie asked. I'm a little worried. She's been quiet since we got back. Not at all. Enjoy bonding with the potatoes, Jay. I am not bonding. Jez leaned forward and whispered loudly. He was naming them right before you came in. I was not, he said, throwing the current potato at her. She easily dodged it, favoring with a finger-wiggling wave, and followed Jessie out, both giggling. The pair asked around without much luck until they came upon Duncan. Hey, Dunk, Jez called. Their friend paused in his work to look up and smile. Hey, fully recovered yet? Just about. Jay still whines about his ribs when it suits him, but Mick assures us he's healing fine, and there really shouldn't be much pain. Dunk chuckled. No surprise there. How about Rye? She's getting there. Mick says she'll have a nice scar on her hand. No surprise there either. Actually, Rye's why we're here, Dunk. You haven't seen her this morning, have you? Jessie asked. As a matter of fact, I have. She headed outside a couple hours ago while I was on guard duty. Said she needed some fresh air. Thanks a million, Dunk, Jessie said, waving as they hurried towards the entrance. After a brief conversation with the woman on duty, they left Cavern Hall and climbed up to the top of their home. As suspected, Rye sat there, staring off into the forest, seemingly not aware of their presence. The duo plopped on either side of her. So gloomy on such a gorgeous day. Real crime. What's wrong? Jessie asked, more bluntly. Should have guessed you two would come find me. Of course. That's what friends do, genius. So what's up? She shrugged. I don't know. I know we're fighting for the right side, but... McRose was very human. And that's why this at its heart is stupid, Jez said. I just expected him to be meaner or downright evil. How can he support the three? Who knows? Life obviously threw him a different ball than it did us, and he ended up there. Doesn't mean he's not a nice enough person in his personal life. But how can you separate them? In war, you don't. So when we kill people, God's breath, I hate this, Rye muttered. I feel like in other circumstances we could have been friends. He isn't a whole lot older than me. In other circumstances, you probably could have been. There's no harm in that, Jessie said. At least he was good looking, so you... Jez, honestly, Jessie said, but was laughing. What? The mood needed some lightening, that's all. And if he was cute, he was cute if I liked younger men. No, you like older men, Rye said dryly. It's supposed to be what happens when she sleeps with Beau, she told Jessie. Jez felt herself instantly flush. It's just sleeping, I swear. What you do at night is none of our concern when you are not sleeping in the same room as us, Rye said with an innocent look. Jez wrinkled her nose. We both know that to do anything else would be idiotic. Making out does not produce babies. Jez promptly grounded her elbow into Rye's side, causing her to squeak even as she laughed and scooted closer to Jessie. Not funny. Yet ultimately true, Jessie said easily. Just because the two of you don't have anyone doesn't mean you need to try and dig every detail out of me. But it is fun. And you turn a gorgeous shade of red. Jez groaned and flopped back onto the mossy rock. Sorin didn't know his brother was back until Vlad started speaking, almost before he entered the room. We need to announce that Ren's alive. Why now? Sorin asked, leaning back in his chair. He just said the same to Ren and Ani earlier, knowing this would be Vlad's next move. He just hadn't quite expected it to be the first words out of his mouth after the trips to Greensward. And hello, how was your trip? He scowled. Terrible. Rhys seems to have respect, he spat the word, for the prisoners. Jackson was acting strangely, and the two prisoners are remarkably resilient. It doesn't help that Rhys still looks like shit. The last part made no sense. What happened to him? The Lockholm girl. Care to elaborate? Sorin asked, not in the mood to try and follow Vlad's thought process, especially with them seemingly flitting in every direction. Rhys was stingy on the door details, but the first time they talked, she apparently went crazy, busted them through a door and almost strangled Rhys before Kilgore and Juke were able to pull her away. Sorin's eyebrows shot up. As a whole, the research he'd found on the Lockholm family placed them as a mild-mannered bunch. That's actually impressive. Are they freedom fighters? Yes, that much we did confirm. That was no surprise. Sorin would have bet just about anything on it. And what did Rhys have to say about his lack of progress? He promises results soon. I'm willing to let him work. He's never failed us, and we've still learned more from them than we have before. He smiled widely. These are the first freedom fighters we've gotten. That we've confirmed, Sorin pointed out. He didn't mention that it had taken them multiple skirmishes, a full-pitched battle, and 18 months to capture 2 freedom fighters, and at the expanse of Greensward's garrison. Who knows where they are these days? He's not going to touch Jasmine for another couple days due to an unfortunate incident involving dislocating her arms. He's afraid if he presses too hard, he'll push her past the point of usefulness, but he says he'll up the ante with James right away. I trust him to get results. All right, so why do we need to announce Ren's survival now? Because you're right. Sorin mentally filed that one away for future reference. About what in particular? I don't like to admit it, but the freedom fighters are becoming wider spread. Announcing Ren will kill their forward momentum. People will be less likely to rebel if they believe a High Castle will be on the throne. Sorin wasn't sure it would work like that. To him, it appeared that Beau High Castle's momentum would never end. They'd waited too long to stem that tide, but he could play along. Those are legitimate reasons. And I think we should deal with the Lockholms. What? Sorin said before he could think better of it. Their daughter is a traitor. They think their daughter is dead, just as we thought her dead. Because she's supposed to be dead, he said dryly. We don't know that. If they knew, we would have known. We have people in their household. As far as they know, they lost their 2 youngest children in a very short period of time. You should know, though, that their second youngest is named Colin. Colin, who was stationed in Northwind at the time of our invasion. Vlad's gaze finally shot to his. Colin is the name of the bastard who snuck Benton Walters out. Yes, quite the coincidence. Are you telling me that neither Lockholm is dead? Sorin nodded, but also shrugged slightly. So Benton and this Lockholm are most likely part of the Little High Castle's merry band as well. It would stand to reason. It means that he has some strength and some important names behind him. People respect Denham Lockholm, and they certainly loved Walters. Vlad growled. We never did find the Walters girl either, did we? No, and I would assume she's found her brother in the meantime. His brother paced the room for a minute. You think they have a chance, Sorin? He asked abruptly, spinning to face him. There's always been a chance, he said mildly, and then changed the subject. We shouldn't reintroduce Ren while he's on crutches. Vlad's expression darkened. No one will notice. Sorin cocked an eyebrow in barely polite skepticism. Not a word, he shot. Sorin ignored him. There are consequences to our actions, even if you prefer to ignore that fact. If you're insistent that this is the right time, that's fine. I'll do what I can to make sure it's a success, but High Castle's freedom fighters are no longer just a small ripple. They are a significant wave and will only get stronger, no matter what you say. His brother stared at him, then spun on his heel and stalked from the room. Denial never did much for anyone, Sorin muttered and rubbed his forehead. He'd meant every word he'd said, and many he'd bitten back, unsure where Vlad lay when it came to sanity. The only way to stop the freedom fighter wave now was to defeat them in their own game or in pitched combat. For the time being, Bo Highcastle wouldn't risk a frontal assault. His numbers were not large enough. At the same time, though, Sorin's own network of spies and informants were being outspied and out-informed by Highcastle's. Whoever was in charge on his end was damn good, and that would not change.